Great, thanks, Matt. Welcome, everyone. Just a bit of honesty to start with. About 30 seconds ago, my internet just managed to kick me off. So I'm hoping that was a fluke, not to start today. So welcome to today's webinar on bouncing forward, how to lead your people through change. So I'll kick off today, introduce myself, my colleague and good friend actually, Adam, who are your hosts. So we were going to start off with this, just a bit of a welcome slide here, and then realised that maybe we'll start with a bit more honesty, because that's not obviously how we're looking right now. Thankfully, we aren't using video capability for this webinar, because I'm sure, like many of you, our lockdown hairstyles aren't a fit for radio, but probably not for TV. So this is what we currently look like. That one hair tie is probably the most valuable thing I currently own, along with that second screen there. So, in the context of today's webinar, lots of changes. Me personally, I'm normally out with clients. We're in the Lane 4 office. So now I'm in the same environment for everything. So this one room has become my office, my gym space. You probably can't see the yoga mat that's kind of teasing me behind there that isn't getting as much use as it probably should. More often than not, this room also seems to be my dining room. It's a habit I need to get out of. So really, why are we doing this webinar? What's important to me about it is that, for me, what I've noticed personally is change. This change actually has impacted everyone in the same way, and I mean that externally in terms of COVID-19 in the UK, at least government requirements. Is that everyone goes into lockdown, stay at home, or if you're in England, more recently, stay alert. The emotions that have come with that, I've noticed, have been hugely different for everyone. So if I think about kind of some of the transitions that I've been through, but also members of my team, and really recognising there's not a one-size-fits-all approach to supporting people through change, and that's really what prompted this webinar. So as we go through today, please add any questions in the chat box. You should see that under your name on the right-hand side, because we're hoping at the end we'll have a bit of time for Q&A. So Adam, I'll hand over to you. Introduce yourself and today's webinar.
Thanks, Emma. Hi, everyone. I suppose I've known Emma a long time, so for me there's no surprises at all that it's a picture, which is a selfie for Emma. So she absolutely loves a selfie, so no surprises at all there. I suppose my world is very similar to Emma, so managing lots of change for my brilliant team, our amazing customers, and for me personally. So I've been and come back from furlough. I also have 3 beautiful rug rats to contend with whilst working from home, I suppose, which is a very new way of working for me and my partner, and something that, well, I suppose as much as we love them, of course, it's taken some managing and adapting to. So on that night, I also do have a quick warning. So my 2-year-old daughter does have a habit of storming into my office. So apologies in advance if one of our key points from today becomes, well, a 2-year-old saying, please can I watch Peppa Pig? Although I suppose Peppa Pig does have a lot of wisdom. So I suppose, like with us, there's lots of change going on for people. And I'm sure everyone on this webinar has their own unique change story. I think importantly, things aren't going to go back to how they were before. So whilst there's lots of opportunity in that, we need to adapt quickly to sustain performance and bounce forward successfully, especially if we want to gain a competitive advantage. So we have an exciting webinar planned for you today to hopefully support with exactly this. Specifically, we want to focus on, I suppose, talking about the difference between change and transition. We want to help you identify the different phases of transition. And we also want to share some real practical advice on how to support people to transition effectively. I think, well, when Emma and I were speaking, we really want to, I suppose we've really felt it was important to recognize that people and organizations like yourselves already had a lot going on already. If we rewound 2 to 3 months, a lot of our clients were already emphasizing how much change we have going on in our organization. So at a macro level, for instance, we had Brexit, well, in the UK at least. We had big movements around environmental issues, increase in automation and AI, and that's just to name a few. So although all of this had become somewhat predictable, stable and manageable, it was having a massive impact on business and therefore all of us. And then COVID came along. I suppose this is a picture that we've probably all become accustomed to seeing. An empty Liverpool street station. I don't think we've ever seen it like this, but this is becoming, or has become, very regular because of COVID. We know famine, war, and disease happens, but a lot of us could have never predicted or anticipated what has happened over the last 2 months. It's also really hard to predict what's going to happen over the next year. And some of the changes we may be experiencing linked to COVID include, I think importantly, I've already mentioned furlough. So going on furlough, coming back from furlough, potentially even going on furlough again. And we've also got lots happening and lots we're hearing around org restructures. So new teams forming in different ways, resizing and restructures. There's changes to our working environment. So social distancing policy, working from home, as Emma mentioned, as well as new hygiene regulations. And also, to finish, we've got sudden changes in demand. And I think this works both ways. I think we've experienced massive peaks. So if we think about supermarkets, and massive peaks in demand in that sector, but also massive drops if we think about the aviation sector or bricks and mortar retail with shops closing. I think without sounding too cliche at this point, change has become the only constant. But for me, we really need to add another layer to this around the accumulative impact. So the build-up of emotion for people around each change and this adding up. I think it's safe to say that people may be experiencing change fatigue more than ever. This is undoubtedly going to trigger heightened emotion as change continues. I definitely think that people's management of change doesn't always start from the same baseline. So change after change will undoubtedly mean heightened impact. And I think that's something that we really need to bear in mind, both on ourselves, but also for the people and teams we're supporting. I think what we've noticed is that people often use the words change and transition interchangeably. And we see them as two distinct things, and therefore we felt it was really important to share how we define both on this webinar. Change, as just mentioned, for us are things that happen. They're external to us: furlough, policy changes, the restructuring. Transition, on the other hand, is the emotional bit. It's internal to us, to me, to you. How we come to terms with and adjust to the change or the new normal. I had to get the new normal in. And I think for me, a real key point here is that transitions can happen quick and easy, or they can be really long and a really difficult process for individuals. Emma and I, we've both had, for me, the privilege of working in sport. And a big classic example for us is when a new head coach comes in with new ideas. We've seen so many instances of players, staff, not wanting to let go of how it was before for years and years. And this is really highly emotive for them, and it can have a massive impact on them personally, but also the team and the performance with that. So for us, supporting people through transition is crucial. Thanks, Adam. I had given him the challenge of not using the term new normal or unprecedented times in this webinar, but he's managed to break it within the first 8 minutes. But I'll let him off. So transition, as Adam says, transition is that human side of changes. So it's the phases that we go through, and really is the bit that we're going to be focusing on in the webinar. So how to support people to transition effectively in a way that minimises impact on individual, but fundamentally on organisational performance. So how we're going to do this is we thought it would be useful to share a simple framework and really as a lens to look through, start to understand the phases of transition that people go through. So this is William Bridges' transition model. Undoubtedly, some of you will be familiar with this. Before I go into each stage a little bit more depth, we often use the analogy of a trapeze artist. You can see from the little images there on the slide. So in order to get from one trapeze to the other, it takes that moment if you've got to decide to let go of that first trapeze. You know, there's something to be said for taking that leap of faith. It can be scary. Even if you're confident you're going to reach the other side, even if you know there's that net below you, then once you do, you then find yourself floating. You're in this neutral zone before you grab hold of that second trapeze and you're confident to be able to move forward.
So I'll walk through these transition phases in a little bit more detail. So if you are familiar with it, then hopefully it's a nice reminder, but also an opportunity for you to reflect, think about what's going on for you, but really what's going on for the people that you lead or the people that are in your team. And if this is new to you, then hopefully it's a framework that might allow you to look at how you can best support people as they go through these transitions. So what we're going to put actually in the chat box, we're going to put up a poll. And so as I'm talking through these, you don't have to answer right away, but as I'm talking through these, think about the most recent change that's impacting on you or your organisation, and maybe which phase of transition you are currently finding yourself in. Continue to ask questions, and we'll come to those at the end. So if we start right at the beginning there, so at the endings part. So people in this stage, they normally enter this initial stage when they're first presented with a change. It's could be marked with resistance or emotional upheaval. People are being forced to let go of something that they're comfortable with. So for me personally, changes happen in my working environment. I think it's safe to say I was a late adopter. So if you think back kind of 9-10 weeks ago, something like that, it's kind of Groundhog Day at times. When people were starting to realise that they're going to need to be working remotely, I happily stayed in denial until the office officially shut, and I had no choice but I guess to let go at that point. And if I think back now, as I was planning this with Adam, as I was thinking back, so what was it that made me not want to take that leap and not want to come to terms with a change? And being really honest with you, it's living on my own, that panic of the unknown, the panic of isolation and not knowing when that isolation was going to end and how am I going to be able to cope with that and what's that going to feel like, and life autonomy. So being forced to do something I wasn't choosing. So looking back, it's these completely irrational feelings of it being unfair. But before people are able to move to that next stage, to that neutral zone, they have to accept that something's ending and recognise what it is that's ending before they can begin to accept the new idea, the new normal as they move.
Twice.
I know, I did it just as you did, to move over into that neutral zone. So as people come to it, moving into the neutral zone, I really like the phrase that's on that slide actually. It's the somewhere between two nowheres. As people enter this neutral zone, they've had that loss, but without gaining anything yet. So they can feel confused or uncertain or possibly even impatient. So depending on how well the change is being managed, they might also experience higher workloads as they get used to new systems, new ways of working. It can cause confusion that's going on. So again, if I relate that back to the transition that I've been through, for me, I think what I realised is I've lost that constant feedback that you get from being around people. So through informal interactions or non-verbal kind of body cues, you have a way of reaffirming that you're doing the right thing or you're having the right impact, or at least recognising when you're not having the right impact so you can do something about it. And I like reflecting, probably didn't recognise at the time, but self-doubt starts to trickle in along with these these insecurities I didn't know were there. But despite that, there are some real positives that can come out of holding that grey space, holding that space of uncertainty, because it can be an opportunity for great creativity and innovation. So if you find yourself or your team or even your organisation at the moment in that neutral zone, don't try to rush through it. Don't try to rush through it too fast, at least, because although it's uncomfortable, great things can come from spending time in that neutral zone. So, at Lane 4 alone, it's presented challenges, as it has for all organisations, but it's also presented the amazing opportunity for innovation, in the way that we work, in our products, in our partnerships with our clients. So there's a lot to be said for holding that space, holding that uncomfortable space in that neutral zone. And once you're able then to start moving forward, you're moving into those new beginnings. So this last stage of transition, and it's a time for acceptance of energy. People have begun to embrace I'm not using new normal, this change.
Come on, go for a third time.
They're building they're building skills that they need to work successfully in this new way, and you're starting to see wins from
Please hold.
We'll put us on hold, but carry on. So if I think about how I've readjusted now, because I think I'm firmly in that at the moment. That's the stage that I'm in. I'm firmly in that new beginning phase. In fact, I just clicked and answered my own poll question, so it goes off my screen. New beginnings. So as I readjusted, and my team readjusted, being able to reset our goals, reset our processes as a team, found innovative ways of getting what I was missing. So in terms of that interaction, that social interaction, that connection. I mean, I don't know how many of you have spent more evenings than you ever have before on things like Zoom quizzes. I have a weekly quiz with my family who live in Abu Dhabi, which I wouldn't be seeing anyway if we weren't in lockdown. So it's a nice, four-way family phone calls on WhatsApp and things like that. So once we settled down as a team and adapted, there was definitely a buzz. The changes provided, like I said, exciting opportunities in digital and virtual learning, innovation, the way that we work, what we do as an organisation. So there's real excitement about that direction. And I guess the final thing to really look at in phases of transition is inevitably there is an impact on performance. So you'll see that little graph down there about you can see a dip, for example, as people resist the change at the beginning, they're letting go. You can then notice a dip as they go into this uncertain, unfamiliar, working through this neutral zone before really accelerating into that new position. I think it's important to note also that everyone goes through these transitions at different paces. So you can have multiple going on at once. In fact, the challenge for organisations and leaders is to give people the support they need to be able to transition effectively. And that's what we want to go on to, some real practical advice in this area.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Emma. I'll try and make it not fourth time for new normal as we go throughout this. And Emma says we're really going to shift our focus to what can you do to support people from, I suppose, moving from the left, so endings, to the right, to new beginnings. And just quickly want to make reference to the poll you've just done. So we had 6 people in endings, we had 15 people in neutral zone, and we had 12 people in new beginnings. We also had 26 people no answer, so maybe they were between 2 nowheres, Emma, as you described. So I just want to focus on firstly the endings phase. So 6 of you are still in this phase, but a lot of you have moved away from this phase. So I suppose what might you be noticing or hearing from people in this phase? They'll probably hear quite a bit around people getting defensive about things. They may be making comparisons to the previous. They may make excuses or find reasons not to move in a new direction. And ultimately, they might keep just doing what they did previously and not adapting. So what can you do to support people to move to the right? Firstly, we think it's really important to provide clarity of direction. So communicate the big picture, really help people accept that things need to change and really help them understand why. And finally, be really clear on expectations. The second piece of advice for us in this stage is challenge appropriately. Look to dispel any myths or assumptions and provide evidence and feedback around unhealthy behaviour. And finally, look to create almost a safe space, a safe environment where people feel comfortable talking through emotions. I think ways you can do this: seek to understand their opinion or their emotion, actively listen, show vulnerability yourself to allow them to feel comfortable that it is okay. But I think really importantly, don't rescue or reinforce resistance. I think the danger at times is we overserve the individual or become overly supportive, that we start colluding, or we start to reinforce their negative beliefs. I think sometimes you can hear the phrase, even that person agrees with me. It's really important that we challenge appropriately and we don't overserve the individual. I think I want to relate it back to my time on furlough and almost how my leader helped me to move through this phase of transition linked to going on furlough. I think what she did, she was really clear, linked to these piece of advice, on the fact we needed to do this as a business. She was really clear on the rationale why and the fact we needed to do this. She really helped dispel kind of some myths around the link between furlough and redundancy, which obviously was never there, but it was almost a worry that was building up in my head. And she really helped normalize that emotion around it. And finally, linked to all of the above, she really helped me talk through it honestly with her. She almost made me feel she was there for me and created a space where it made me feel comfortable talking through my true emotions about how I was feeling. So she did these 3 pieces of advice really well, and it really helped shift me more towards the neutral zone.
Thanks, Ad. So I'll go on to there, as Adam said, shifting in towards that neutral zone. So what might you notice? A reminder, what might you notice here? People saying, so that's the frustration, the low mood. They might feel that the anxiety creeping up, quite uncertain, because they don't know where their focused are. The things that gave them validation before, they may have lost. And with that becomes kind of a dent in self-esteem, those insecurities. And so people could become quite withdrawn, quite quiet as they're trying to really work out, what does all of this mean for me? So what can you do as a leader, as a manager, even as a teammate, I suppose, for some of you, in terms of supporting people to transition effectively through this neutral zone? So the first one we've got there is focus on achievable short-term goals. So aligning short-term goals so people can experience those short-term wins, and it really impacts, it can help motivation, as well as give people a positive perception of that change, a positive perception of what's possible as you're moving forward. So that's it, the achievable short-term concrete goals. The second one is ensuring processes and routines support the new approach, new ways of working. I kind of delved into this a little bit before, but what we didn't do effectively right at the beginning, if I think, and I take the blame on me here for my team, is hadn't readjusted our meetings. We kept the same meeting process, same meeting structure that we'd always had, but a team is not a collection of meetings, and that becomes evident when you go virtual from when you've been face to face. So we no longer had those informal catch-ups, grab a coffee, check in with each other, collaborate when you haven't planned it in. So what we've done is we've factored in, for example, like official coffee meetings that are just there for social check-ins and things. So it's ensuring that those processes don't become a barrier. So they support the new way of working and don't support people to stay behind or go back into that old way of working. And then finally, remember that although it's uncomfortable, neutral zone is a phase that promotes great innovation and creativity. And the reason for this is because you can capitalize on that break of routine. So think about the restraints that usually surround innovation. They become weakened when the routine changes. So with everything up in the air anyway, people are more willing than usual to try new things. And what you can do is actively encourage this, so encourage curiosity and learning and new ideas. And even more so, above this as well, role model it. So take the time yourself to take a step back, question how your own job is done and what you're doing, because role modeling the behaviours is such a positive way to be able to support people to see what is possible if they're struggling to find that for themselves.
It's really great, Ems, and based on the poll, we have about 15 people or more on this webinar that are currently in this phase or believe they're in this phase. So I think it's a key message to pick up on, despite potentially feeling anxious, but despite potentially feeling like you're not sure quite what's happening. Actually, if you can get comfortable with those feelings and then try and push creativity and new ideas through rather than rushing to the first thing that comes into our mind, it's a really great space to be in for long-term innovation. So I think that's just a really good message for a lot of the people on the webinar that are in the neutral zone. So just moving now into new beginnings. So again, what may we be noticing from people in this stage, or from yourself if you're in this stage? I think we probably start using the language around this is working well. People will start feeling more comfortable. As Emma said previously, kind of energy will start to pick up. And you may even hear things like there's lots of positives in this, or how can we even make this even better? So what can we do to support people in this stage? And I think really importantly, we still want to support people in this stage to maximize performance and equally to stop people from shifting back to the left. So it's really important we continue to do good activity. So the first one for us is celebrate successes. Look to keep that buzz, as Emma said, alive by building and sustaining positive momentum and belief through celebrating success. But this celebrating success will also help build social consensus around what good looks like. So the more you celebrate things, the more people have got an appreciation of what great looks like, and therefore they're more likely to continue or pick up on that behavior. Secondly, look to really praise positive action, reinforce positive thinking and behavior to promote it happening again and again. I think we can often forget about this one because it's potentially not seen as important. Or Emma, I know you probably would have heard this a lot as well. They know they've done it well. Actually, at times they don't. So it's really crucial to give that positive feedback to embed new behaviours. And finally, Emma and I were coming up to the last piece of advice. So we thought we'd try and get catchy on the title. So let people fly is what we came up with. I'm not sure we need a poll on whether that's good or not, but anyway, so put let people fly, channel this renewed energy. And what we mean by this, from I suppose especially a leadership perspective, this is like really where you really need to dial up trust and empowerment to your people. Really let them run with that positive energy and make it brilliant, as opposed to potentially trying to restrict it still with micromanaging or with further restrictions or advice from yourself. So really at this point, let people fly, empower them. Let them use that renewed energy in the kind of in a great direction. I think when I'm thinking about examples of being in the new beginning phase for me at this point, a big one that stood out was potentially social distancing, whether that's kind of within retail and the shops or whether that's within our workplace. I think a lot of people now recognise and are comfortable with the guidelines, and a lot of people are doing it. But how do we ensure it keeps happening? Not only that, how do we make it even better? How do we make it even more efficient? How do we make it more effective? So almost it doesn't stop by people understanding the guidelines, build a buzz about it, and then look to continually advance and improve it so we continue to maximize performance and bounce forward brilliantly.
Great, thanks Adam. So there's a couple of questions come through there, so we'll get to those in a moment. But in general, we hope, for those of you listening, you valued the time maybe for you to reflect on what's going on personally, or for those people that you lead and fundamentally picked up some useful advice on how can you help manage that human side of change and transition effectively so it doesn't negatively impact on performance, and you're also supporting people to understand what's going on for them. At Lane 4, we've worked, we're over 25 years old now as an organisation, and we've worked with teams going through change. As Adam said before, we've done it in sport, but fundamentally we also do it mostly in business. So we got our consulting methodologies that we use, exercise techniques, and most of the work that we do with teams is underpinned with our high-performing teams framework. And I'm not going to go into it on this call. Please, get in touch, obviously, if you'd like to know more about it. But fundamentally, what it has is it's a framework that gives you the characteristics of what teams need to be successful. And what we know is that, as Adam said right at the start, change is constant. Change is never going to stop. So what you can do to really create high-performing teams is a way to transition effectively, support each other to transition through these phases are fundamental to organisational performance. So in the interest of that neutral zone and some of the innovation, I wanted to just share a couple of areas that we've done that we're working on and we're working with clients in at the moment is how do you create the high-performing teams across organisations? And what we've done is we've got the product called Team 4, and what it looks at is a way of diagnosing and looking at, okay, what does this mean for my team? What's going on for us? Where are our strengths? Where are our development areas against this high-performance team framework? And then giving leaders and line managers power to have lots of activities to be able to do it themselves. So whether they're activity cards or different ways of really understanding these characteristics in more detail. And then as an organisation, having this composite report, this data to understand as a whole, what does that mean for the dynamics of high-performing teams across your organisation? So whether that's empowering line managers through that version or actually creating your own client practitioners. It's something that we're looking at about how do you create organisations that are resilient to change and have high-performing teams throughout. So thank you again for listening to the webinar. There's a couple of questions that have come through. I know Adam can't currently see the chat box, so as if I read out the ones that have come through. So we've got here one from Graham that said, great point on visible goals. but how do you cater for the fact that some team members are more easily able to see over the horizon to the end goal and others need closer head marks? And I think actually in your second part there, Graham, you've hit the nail on the head. He said maybe break the message or the targets down into smaller stages. So if I go to answer that, rather than throwing on new ads and build on it, conscious of time. But that's exactly it, Graham said before. I said, when people are in the neutral zone, about having those short-term goals that you can aim for and you can move towards. Actually, as Adam said right at the beginning, I think it was on. I'll go on to the endings one about providing that clear direction. Of having, how do you set a vision, for example? So we have, as Lane 4, we have a plan on a page, which shows organisationally what do we stand for, what's our vision, what are our outcome goals that we measure our success by, and then each of our teams have goals aligned to those, and then individually our goals are aligned to those. So it's breaking them down into something that feels like quick short-term wins that gives you the confidence that you're progressing, but equally the line of sight that you know what you're progressing and you're contributing to. So that's what I'd say in terms of helping people continue to move forward. It's both and. It's having the big term, long-term vision and goals that provide clarity, and the short-term wins that give you the confidence and the focus on where you're going and where you're progressing to.
Great. Thanks, Emma. I'll just pick up on Nick's question quickly as well, but I just want to add to that because I think Graham hit the nail on the head again. So Graham, you should join the panel. I think what you put is almost everyone's individual, and I think that's hopefully a message we've tried to get across from this webinar around transitions. And actually for some people it may need that you need to work it through with them more and really talk it through. So I think it's another key point around these goals. It may be that you want to do some slightly different things with different individuals because they may be at a different point in their transition. And Nick's comment very quickly, maybe the last one, was about how do you help people overcome accumulative fatigue? I think it's a really great question. I think for the firstly, we'd often talk to customers and clients about how do you look to recognize the different changes going on and streamline it. So almost an air traffic controller. So there wasn't loads of change or all the changes happening at once. Obviously, that's not applicable, or it's not, I suppose, possible potentially with COVID-19. So I think for me, a really great kind of thing is just to be aware of it, Nick. Awareness is key, because I suppose once you're aware that it's change after change, it's about how do you support your team with almost their resilience recipe. So if we know there's lots of change on the horizon, it could be quite an emotive time for people. How do you make sure people are still prioritizing what they need to be at their best? Whether that's sleep, whether that's exercise, whether that's maximizing the use of their support network. So I think a key one is if it's in your control, air traffic control, and look to manage the timing of when changes happen. If it's not, how do we recognize that, be aware of it, so we can support people more with their resilience and how they're going to manage this next period.
Brilliant. So thank you everyone for listening to our webinar today. Look out, I'll send an email out from me that will have the recording of it. So if you want to listen back, if there are any slides that you found useful or anything that you want to download or send to others in your organisation, then please do. Otherwise, anything that you want to talk about that you've heard today, get in touch with Adam or I directly, or Lane 4, and we'll be happy to have someone to provide and answer any of those other questions.
Absolutely. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.